On this episode of China Uncensored, remembering 2016, because we have to. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Well, we all made it through 2016, and we deserve a round of applause. You know, there's an old Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. What's that, Shelley? It's not actually a Chinese curse at all and was most likely made up by some British guy? Of course it was. Anyway, boy, do we ever live in interesting times. So let's take a look back at 10 of the biggest stories from China in 2016. Number 10. Beijing, we have a problem. China has ambitious space plans. This is the Tiangong-1 space station. China launched it in 2011. Then in March 2016, state-run Xinhua News announced that the Tiangong-1 had completed its missions and would descend gradually in the coming months, back down to Earth. But what they actually meant is that China has lost control of the Tiangong-1, and by descend gradually, they meant crash. Yes, it will crash back down to Earth, breaking apart into chunks as big as 200 pounds, cannonballing down at terminal velocity, landing somewhere that's impossible to predict on an unknown date in 2017. Just one way 2017 can have 2016 beat. Number 9. China's first female president. And by China, I mean the other China. In January, the Republic of China elected its first female president, Tsai Ing-wen. And Tsai has never officially acknowledged the One China policy, which made the other China really mad. State-run Xinhua News published a commentary that accused Tsai of being emotional, extremist, and erratic. Not because of specific policies, mind you, but because she's a single woman. You see, as a single female politician, she does not have the emotional burden of love, family, or children, so her political style and strategies are displayed to be more emotional, personal, and extreme. Because as elections in several other countries this year have conclusively proven, male political leaders are never emotional, personal, or extreme. Number 8. China's plan for internet domination. On October 1st, the US let its contract with ICANN expire. Very simply put, there's a department of ICANN that's in charge of the internet's address book. It makes sure users get to the websites they intend to visit. That address book is like the one ring of the internet. Whoever controls it controls them all. An American organization had overseen ICANN since time immemorial, i.e. since Al Gore invented the internet. But as of October 2016, ICANN is controlled by a multi-stakeholder model. It doesn't belong to China either, but the Chinese regime has gotten pretty good at manipulating the international stakeholders that are now overseeing it. Ultimately, the Chinese regime goal is to control the world's internet and make it more like the harmonious internet protected by China's Great Firewall, without that pesky freedom of speech. Number 7. The Panama Papers. April saw the biggest data leak in history, the Panama Papers. 2.6 terabytes of documents were leaked from a Panama-based company called Mossack Fonseca. And it was a huge scandal for the Chinese regime, because fully 1/3 of Mossack Fonseca's business came from China. Those leaked documents revealed a lot of information about China's elite, including at least 8 family members of current and former members of China's Politburo Standing Committee. The Panama Papers also revealed how wealthy Chinese are increasingly moving their money out of China. Number 6. China steals a US drone. Yes, the Chinese Navy took a US research drone in December. It was measuring oceanic temperature and stuff about 50 miles off the coast of the Philippines or 500 miles off the coast of China. This caused an international incident, of course. Fortunately, China gave the drone back once they found out it was totally boring. They gave it back even though President-elect Trump told China via Twitter they could keep it. I guess they didn't get the message since Twitter is banned in China. Number 5. China loses the South China Sea. China is embroiled in territorial disputes with pretty much every one of its neighbors over the South China Sea. That's what happens when you claim pretty much the whole thing. But China's plan for domination hit a little snafu in July when the Philippines successfully got the UN to hold an arbitration case in The Hague. And The Hague ruled in a unanimous decision that all of China's claims are illegitimate. It was a big win for the Philippines, at least on paper. But then this guy got elected, the new president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. And that brings us to number 4. China wins the South China Sea. President Rodrigo Duterte has been pushing for closer ties with China and turning away from the US. During his October trip to China, he didn't even bring up the territorial dispute. And it paid off for him, kind of. The Chinese Coast Guard stopped blocking Filipino fishermen from fishing in the Scarborough Shoal, which gave me the perfect opportunity to plant my flag there. But by making this concession, Duterte also weakened the Philippines' future claim to the region. In other words, in the long term, China wins. Number 3. Hong Kong oath-taking scandal. The Chinese regime has been aggressively encroaching on freedoms in Hong Kong, but pro-democracy lawmakers in Hong Kong won a big victory in the September elections. They won 30 seats in the Legislative Council, giving them veto power over the pro-Beijing side. It was a great win, until these two took their oaths of office. They held up flags that said Hong Kong is not China, and in their off-script oath, they referred to China using a slur the Japanese had used during World War II. That gave Beijing the excuse to make an interpretation of Hong Kong basic law, the interpretation being they disqualified those two officials. That opened the floodgates. Chief Executive C.Y. Leung is now seeking to disqualify 4 others. If they're successful, then the pro-democracy side loses its veto power in the Legislative Council. In other words, the pro-Beijing side could do whatever it wants, and the Chinese Communist Party would win Hong Kong. Number 2. People finally start talking about organ harvesting. 10 years ago, former Canadian Member of Parliament David Kilgour and human rights lawyer David Matas began telling the world that the Chinese regime was killing Falun Gong practitioners for their organs. And the world media was like, yeah, whatever, where's the smoking gun? But this year, a lot of media started taking their claims more seriously, because in June, they released a new report that showed that yes, the thing we've been telling you about for 10 years is true. The Chinese Communist Party is killing Falun Gong practitioners, house Christians, and Uyghur Muslims, and selling their organs for profit. And it's on the scale of 60 to 100,000 organ transplants per year. Will 2017 shed more light on this terrible practice? Let's hope so. And finally, number 1. Xi Jinping goes Super Saiyan. Xi Jinping is the strongest leader China has seen in a generation. And this year, he powered up. It's over 9,000, in fact. In April, he assumed the title of Commander-in-Chief of the new Joint Operations Command of the People's Liberation Army. No one saw it coming, and not just because he was wearing camouflage. This was a major step forward in his purging of rivals, like people tied to former Chinese leader Jiang Zemin, who was seen as previously holding an iron grip on the armed forces. Then, at the end of October, Xi Jinping became China's core leader, bringing Xi one step closer to becoming what I like to call a presitator, somewhere between a president and a dictator. The internal power struggle within the Communist Party has raged on since 2012, and 2017 will bring even more changes as many of the top leaders of the party are supposed to step down. I bet those will be some fun retirement parties. So what was your favorite China story of 2016? Leave your comments below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next year. What do you need to know about China? I teamed up with my friends and fellow YouTubers at List25 to make a list of 25 things you need to know about China. Click here to check it out.